The chamber stretched out before him like a vast cathedral of chrome and light. Ambassador Juno stood at the speaker's platform, his hands resting calmly on the metal podium, despite the churning in his stomach. Around him, in circular tiers that rose toward the domed ceiling, sat representatives from 850 different species. Some had faces he could almost understand. Others were masses of tentacles, clouds of gas contained in force fields, or geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. He had practiced his speech for months. Every word had been chosen carefully, translated into the common galactic language by the best linguists Earth could provide. Behind him, Haijin stood ready with data displays showing humanity's achievements, their art, their science, their potential. She was young, only 32, but she believed in this mission with a fire that Juno had lost somewhere over his 20 years of diplomatic service. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Juno began. His voice projected through translation devices that would render his words comprehensible to every being in the room. Humanity comes before you today, not as supplicants, but as potential partners. We have much to offer and much to learn. A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Juno a moment to recognize it as laughter. Not polite chuckling, but open mockery. A delegate from the third tier, a being that resembled a mantis made of crystal, spoke without waiting for permission. Partners? You've barely achieved faster-than-light travel. You still use combustion engines on your homeworld. Your medical technology is so primitive that you die from diseases we cured 10,000 years ago. More laughter. Haijin's face tightened, but she maintained her professional stance. Jinho pressed on. We acknowledge that we have much to learn. That is why we request access to the Technology Exchange Program. In return, we offer our unique perspectives, our cultural contributions, and our labor in labor. The voice boomed from somewhere in the upper tiers. The speaker was a massive creature, vaguely reptilian, with scales that shimmered between purple and green. Jinho recognized the species, Vrelian, one of the founding members of the council. Yes, humans are good for labor. Adequate at following instructions, though slow to comprehend even simple concepts. The Vrelian delegate continued, warming to his subject. We have employed humans in our mining colonies. They work hard. I will grant them that. Like domesticated animals work hard. But to call them partners? The creature made a sound that the translators rendered as contemptuous laughter. They are barely sentient organics clinging to a backwater rock. Jinho felt Haijin stiffen behind him. He raised a hand slightly, a gesture she would recognize as a signal to remain calm. He had endured worse in his years of service. Words could not hurt him anymore. If the council would examine our proposal, Jinho said, his voice level, you would see that humanity has made remarkable progress in the mere 2 centuries since we joined the galactic community. Our rate of technological advancement, while starting from a lower baseline, exceeds nothing. Another voice interrupted. This delegate was humanoid, covered in white fur, with too many eyes. You want us to give you our technology. Technology that took our civilizations millions of years to develop. And what will you give us in return? Paintings? Music? Stories? The word stories dripped with disdain. We have art. We have culture. We do not need yours. Haijin stepped forward before Jinho could stop her. Our culture has value, she said, her voice carrying an edge despite her diplomatic training. Our adaptability has value. Our perspective as a young species has value. We see problems differently. We ask questions that others consider already answered. Throughout history, that fresh viewpoint has led to breakthroughs in silence. The word came from the council chairman, a being of pure energy contained within a hexagonal frame. The human delegation will refrain from speaking out of turn. Ambassador Jinho, your petition has been heard. The council will now vote. The vote was swift. Holographic displays showed the results in real time as they cascaded across the chamber. Red lights dominated the display, representing negative votes. A few scattered green lights appeared, species that Jingho recognized as minor members, ones with little influence. The final tally appeared in the air before him. 847 against, 3 in favor. The petition is denied, the chairman announced. However, in recognition of humanity's enthusiasm, the Council will grant Earth Observer status. You may attend Council sessions and watch our proceedings. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have matured as a species, we will reconsider. The chamber erupted in discussion, delegates already moving on to the next topic. Jingho stood at the podium for a moment longer, watching the beings who had just casually dismissed his entire species as beneath notice. Then he bowed, as protocol demanded, and turned to leave. Haijin followed him through the long corridors of the council station. Her hands were clenched into fists. They didn't even consider it, she said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. They didn't look at our data. They didn't examine our proposals. They just laughed at us. Yes, Jingho said simply. We should protest. We should demand another hearing. We should return to Earth, Jingho interrupted gently. There is nothing more to be done here today. They reached their shuttle, a small craft that looked crude next to the sleek vessels of other species. Inside, Jingho sat heavily in the pilot's seat. He was 67 years old. He had spent a third of his life trying to gain the Council's respect. And he had failed. Haijin sat beside him, silent now. As they undocked and began the journey back to Earth's orbital station, Jingho pulled up a communication screen. He began recording a message to the United Earth government, to the President and the Council of Nations that had sent him here. They will never accept us, he said to the camera. I have tried for 20 years. Others tried for decades before me. But today I saw the truth clearly. They do not see us as potential equals. They see us as primitives, as servants, as entertainment. They will take our labor and give us nothing in return. They will keep us in this position forever, always observer status, always on the outside, because it serves their purposes to have a species they can look down upon. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Through the viewport, he could see Earth's moon growing larger as they approached the station. It is time to consider the alternative, Jingho continued. It is time to ask ourselves whether we truly need the Council's approval, whether we truly need their technology, whether dignity and self-determination might be worth more than a seat at a table where we are the joke rather than the guest. He ended the recording and sent it on a secure channel. Beside him, Haijin was staring at the stars beyond the viewport. What alternative? She asked quietly. Jingho looked at her and saw something shift in her expression as she read his answer in his eyes. The alternative where we stop asking for permission, he said. The alternative where we find our own way. In the council chamber, 850 species continued their business, already forgetting the human delegation that had so briefly amused them. Not one of them suspected that they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. 5 years had passed since the Council's rejection. In the grand scheme of galactic politics, 5 years was barely a blink. Most species lived for centuries, some for millennia. Alliances took decades to form. Wars lasted generations. So when Earth's diplomatic presence began to quietly diminish, few noticed. Fewer cared. Haijin had stopped attending council sessions 2 years ago. She told herself it was because her skills were needed elsewhere, but the truth was simpler. She could not bear to sit in that chamber anymore, watching humanity's achievements dismissed, their questions mocked, their presence tolerated only as a source of amusement. Now she stood in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars, watching Dr. Minho work. The scientist was 58, gray-haired and perpetually disheveled, with the distracted manner of someone who lived more in theory than reality. But his theories were changing everything. "Show me again," Haijin said. Minho sighed, but he pulled up the holographic display. "This is standard Council fold drive technology," he explained, highlighting a complex structure of exotic matter and quantum fields. "It bends space. It works. But it's inefficient, requires massive power sources, and leaves a detectable signature across subspace." He swiped the display, replacing it with a new design. "This is what we've developed. We don't bend space. We fold it differently, using quantum principles the Council never fully explored because they achieved good enough technology millions of years ago and stopped innovating." Haijin studied the design. She was not a scientist, but she had learned enough over the past years to recognize what she was seeing. "This is better," she said. It was not a question. "This is revolutionary," Minho corrected. "It's faster. It uses a fraction of the power. And most importantly, it's nearly undetectable. A ship using this drive leaves almost no trace." He looked at her directly. "Which is what we need, isn't it? If we're really doing this." "We're really doing this," Haijin confirmed. Across the solar system, in a converted asteroid habitat beyond Neptune's orbit, Yunhe sat surrounded by data screens. Each screen showed a different human settlement, outpost, or station scattered across Council space. Mining colonies on resource-rich worlds. Scientific teams studying strange phenomena on the edges of known space. Trading posts where humans sold their labor and bought the goods they needed to survive. Yuna was 39 and had spent her entire adult life in logistics. She understood supply chains, movement patterns, resource allocation. She could look at chaos and see order, see the most efficient path from point A to point B. Now she was planning the most complex logistical operation in human history. "How many?" asked the man beside her. Captain Dayan was older, in his 50s, with scars from his years serving in Council military operations. He had left that service 3 years ago, disgusted by how his human subordinates were treated compared to other species. 43 billion, Yuna answered. That's every human being not currently living on Earth, scattered across 217 different locations in Council space. Dayan whistled softly. "And we need to evacuate all of them without the Council noticing." "Correct." Yunhe pulled up a timeline. "We've been gradually reducing our presence for 2 years now, recalling people under the cover of economic restructuring, shutting down unprofitable operations. The Council expects humans to fail at commerce, so they don't question it when we do." "Clever," Dayan admitted. "It's not enough to be clever," Yunhe said. "We need to be invisible. We need to move 43 billion people, plus every ship, every piece of equipment, every scrap of research data. And when we're done, there needs to be no trail. Nothing the Council can follow." On a Council station near the Vrelian homeworld, a young engineer named Somen was doing something technically illegal. She was accessing Council databases, copying technical specifications, searching for patterns. The Council shared basic technology freely, but kept their advanced systems locked behind layers of security. They believed those systems were too complex for humanity to understand anyway. They were wrong. Somen had been studying Council technology for 6 years. She understood it better than most species who had been using it for centuries, because she understood the principles, not just the operation. And she had found something interesting. Council fold drives were massive. They had to be, to generate the power and exotic matter fields required. But Minho's new quantum fold principle changed everything. Somen had spent 3 months running simulations, and her conclusions were clear. They could miniaturize the drive, make it small enough for personal vessels, escape pods, even individual evacuation suits. she sent her findings to Mars on a secure channel. Minho's response came back within hours. Begin production immediately. We need 10 million units. 10 million personal fold drives. Enough to evacuate anyone who might be left behind when the main ships departed. Enough to ensure that no human would be trapped in Council space when the exodus happened. Back on Earth, in a conference room in Geneva, representatives from every nation gathered for a vote. The question before them was simple, though its implications were vast. Should humanity abandon the Galactic Council and seek their own path among the stars? Jinho presented the case. He was older now, moving more slowly, but his voice had lost none of its strength. They will never accept us as equals, he said. 5 years ago, I hoped I was wrong. I hoped that given time, given proof of our worth, they would change their minds. But nothing has changed. We are still the joke, still the servants, still the species barely worth noticing. A delegate from Africa stood. But leaving means abandoning the security the Council provides. Protection from hostile species. Access to trade routes. Medical technology. We have our own medical technology now, Hygiene interjected. She had been invited to speak as the former xenodiplomatic lid. Dr. Minho's team has made breakthroughs the Council never achieved because they stopped innovating. We have our own fold drives that surpass Council technology. We have mapped routes through space the Council doesn't know exist. The only thing we get from the Council now is contempt. The debates lasted 3 days. Arguments flew back and forth. Some wanted to stay, to keep trying. Others were eager to leave, to prove humanity's worth by succeeding without Council support. A few simply wanted to escape the constant humiliation of being the galaxy's laughingstock dot on the 3rd day they voted. The count was projected on screens around the world, 87% in favor of departure. Humanity had made its choice. Minho stood in his laboratory, receiving the news. Around him, his team erupted in cheers. They had been preparing for this moment, hoping for it, and now it was real. How long? Asked his chief assistant. 18 months, Minho said. We need 18 months to complete the colony ships, finish evacuations, and coordinate everything. He pulled up a star chart, highlighting regions beyond Council space. In directions no Council species had fully explored. We've identified 57 potential colony sites. Systems with habitable worlds or terraforming candidates. All far enough away that the Council won't stumble across us. Yunha received the same news in her asteroid habitat. She immediately activated protocols she had spent 2 years preparing. Messages went out on secure channels to every human settlement. Instructions were clear. Begin final preparations. Recall all personnel. Dismantle anything too valuable or sensitive to leave behind. Make it look like economic failure, like humans giving up and going home. The Council barely noticed. Humans had always been transient, always struggling. Their departure from unprofitable ventures was expected. They lead covert missions to retrieve human artifacts from Council museums, research from joint projects, anything that represented humanity's contribution to galactic civilization. They took it all back. If the Council wanted to forget humanity existed, humanity would help them by removing every trace. Summon's miniaturized fold drives began rolling off production lines. They were beautiful in their simplicity. A unit small enough to fit in a backpack, powerful enough to carry a person across light years. She tested the first prototype herself, folding from Mars to Jupiter in 3 seconds. The feeling was indescribable. And beyond Neptune, in the darkness where the sun was just another star, construction continued on the great colony ships. Each vessel was 30 kilometers long, capable of carrying 1 million people in comfort. They were being built using Council designs improved by human innovation. powered by Minho's quantum fold drives. 50 ships in total. Enough for the entire human population. With room to grow, Jin Ho visited the construction site 6 months before the planned departure. He floated in an observation pod, watching the massive vessels take shape against the stars. They were beautiful. They represented hope. They represented humanity choosing dignity over acceptance, self-determination over belonging to a club that did not want them. He was 72 now. He might not live to see humanity's new civilization flourish, but he would live long enough to see them leave, to see them take control of their own destiny. That was enough. The council clerk barely glanced at the notification. Another minor species filing paperwork, closing their embassy, withdrawing from active participation. It happened sometimes. Species got discouraged, went home, focused on their own worlds for a century or two before trying again. Humans were just another entry in a very long list. The clerk filed the closure documents under A for Earth and moved on to more important matters. It would be weeks before anyone noticed that Earth had not just closed their embassy. They had shut down every single diplomatic post, recalled every trade representative, and withdrawn from every joint program. Even then, the Council's response was minimal. A few minor officials discussed it briefly, decided it was not worth investigating, and returned to their regular duties. In the human colony on Vrel 7, a mining world in Vrelian space, Daeun oversaw the final evacuation. 3,000 workers had called this place home for 15 years. They had dug minerals from the rock, operated machinery, lived in dormitories, carved into the cliff faces. The Vrelian overseers had treated them like tools. Useful tools, but tools nonetheless. Now, the tools were leaving. All personnel accounted for, reported a young officer named Ora. She was checking names against her tablet, making sure no one was left behind. Equipment dismantled or destroyed per protocol. No trace of our advanced technology remaining. Good, Daeun said. He looked around at the dormitories, now empty and dark. Destroy the rest. Make it look like we just abandoned everything. Charges were set. The evacuation ships lifted off, their holds full of people eager to leave. Behind them, the human settlement collapsed into rubble. When Vrelian supervisors arrived 3 days later to check on their human workers, they found ruins and a simple message in the common galactic language. Contract terminated. Thank you for the opportunity. The Vrelians were annoyed, but not concerned. Humans were unreliable. They had always known that. They would hire another species for the mining work. Similar scenes played out across council space. Research stations emptied overnight. Trading posts shut down without warning. Agricultural settlements on the edges of civilization simply vanished, leaving behind empty fields and sealed buildings. Every human in council territory was coming home and then leaving. On Earth's moon, at the primary spaceport, Yunha coordinated the massive flow of returnees. Ships arrived hourly, disgorging thousands of people who had spent years or decades living among aliens. They were processed quickly, efficiently, and directed to the colony ships waiting beyond Neptune. We're ahead of schedule, Yunha reported during a coordination meeting. All major settlements evacuated. We're down to scattered individuals and small research teams. Another 3 weeks, and we'll have everyone. Jin Ho nodded. He was at the spaceport too, watching the Great Migration. 43 billion people moving across the solar system in a carefully choreographed dance of ships and stations. It was the largest logistical operation in human history. And it was working. Hai Jin stood on the observation deck of the colony ship called New Dawn. It was one of the first completed, already filled with 5 million people, families and individuals who had volunteered to be in the first wave. She pressed her hand against the transparent aluminum viewport and looked back at Earth, She had spent 10 years trying to make the Council respect humanity. 10 years of careful diplomacy, cultural exchanges demonstrating human worth. And it had been completely useless. They had never cared. They had never intended to care? Any regrets? Soman asked. The young engineer had been assigned to New Dawn as Chief Technical Officer. None? Haijin said. I used to think that if we tried hard enough, proved ourselves enough, they would eventually accept us. But I understand now that it was never about what we achieved. It was about them needing someone to look down on, someone to feel superior to. We could have cured every disease in the galaxy, and they would have found reasons to dismiss it. My mother used to say that you cannot argue someone out of a position they did not argue themselves into, Soman said. The Council did not decide we were inferior through logic. They decided it through prejudice. No amount of evidence would change their minds. Deep in the Mars laboratory, Minho was packing up the last of his research. Everything was being transferred to digital storage, backed up across multiple locations. Physical samples were carefully crated. Equipment was being dismantled and loaded onto transport ships. Are we taking everything? His assistant asked. Everything, Minho confirmed. When we leave nothing useful behind. No research, no data, no technology. If the Council wants to know what we achieved, they can wonder about it. The quantum fold drives were installed in every colony ship now. Minho had supervised the final tests personally. They performed beyond specifications. A ship could cross the galaxy in weeks rather than years. And they left almost no detectable trail, unlike Council drives that blazed across subspace like signal flares. Where are we going? The assistant asked. Away, Minho said. Far away. To places the Council has not explored because their fold drives make such journeys impractical. We will find worlds they never reached, build civilizations they never imagined. On Earth itself, a different kind of departure was happening. The planet was not being abandoned carelessly. Cities were powered down systematically. Parks and wilderness areas were left pristine. Historical monuments were sealed and protected. It was as if humanity was putting their homeworld into careful storage, preserving it for a possible future return. Jinho walked through the streets of Geneva for the last time. The city was empty, silent except for the wind and the sound of his own footsteps. Lights had been turned off. Vehicles sat idle in parking structures. Shops were locked but intact. Everything waiting, preserved, for whenever humans might come back. If they came back. It feels wrong to leave it, said a young man walking beside him. Juno was part of the final departure team, making sure everything was properly secured. It is not abandonment, Juno said. It is preservation. We are not running away from Earth. We are taking humanity to new places while keeping our homeworld safe. One day, when we are stronger, when we have built something worthy, we may return. And if the Council comes here? Let them, Jinho said. They will find an empty world, carefully maintained, clearly left by choice rather than disaster. Let them wonder why we left. Let them question their assumptions. The final ship to leave Earth's moon was small, a courier vessel designed for speed. Jinho stood on its bridge as it undocked. Below, through the viewport, Earth rotated slowly. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for their entire history. Now they were leaving it behind. Final communication check, said the pilot. All satellites deactivated. All communication arrays pointed toward Council space had been dismantled. We are going silent. Confirmed, Jinho said. Send the final message. The message was brief, sent on all frequencies the Council monitored. It said simply, thank you for the lessons. We will find our own way. Do not look for us. We will contact you if we choose to return. Humanity signing off. Then silence. The colony ships began their departure in waves. New Dawn was first, its quantum full drive engaging with barely a shimmer of distorted light. One moment the massive vessel was there, 30 kilometers of metal and hope. The next moment it was gone, jumped to a rally point 100 light years away, along a vector no Council species had ever explored. Ship after ship followed. The greatest fleet humanity had ever assembled, carrying every human being who had lived in Council space. 43 billion souls, crossing into the unknown, guided by coordinates that Minho's team had carefully mapped over 5 years of secret exploration. Yunhao watched from the last ship to depart. She had stayed until the end, making sure no one was left behind. Her tablet showed green lights across the board. Every human accounted for. Every settlement evacuated. Every piece of sensitive technology destroyed or removed. "We did it," she said softly. Beside her, Baya nodded. "Now comes the hard part. Building a new civilization from scratch." "Not from scratch," Yuna corrected. "We take with us everything we have learned. All our knowledge, all our culture, all our determination. We are not starting over. We are starting fresh." The last ship's full drive engaged. The solar system fell away. Earth became a distant memory. A place they would love forever, but did not need to beg for the right to live. In the council chamber, 3 months later, a minor official finally noticed that no human ship had docked at any council station in over 100 days. No human had attended any session. No communication had been received from Earth or any human settlement. Should we investigate? The official asked her superior. Why bother? The superior replied. They obviously realized they did not belong here and went home. Good riddance. We have more important matters to address. The council returned to their business. 850 species discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes and scientific collaborations. Not one of them suspected that the species they had dismissed so casually had just achieved something none of them could match. Not one of them imagined that humanity had not just gone home. They had left entirely, taking their ingenuity and determination to places beyond council reach, and in a star system thousands of light years away. Jinho stood on soil no human had ever touched before, beneath the light of twin suns, and smiled. "Here," he announced to the crowd of colonists gathering around him. "Here we build something better, something that is truly ours." Around him, 43 billion humans prepared to prove that they had never needed the Council's approval. 20 years had passed since humanity's departure from Council space. In the grand timeline of galactic civilization, 20 years was nothing. Most council members barely registered the passage of such a brief period. But for the galaxy itself, 20 years without humanity was beginning to show effects. The first cracks appeared in the Vrelian economy. The Vrelian homeworld was a center of manufacturing and resource extraction. They produced components used across the galaxy, machinery that kept other civilizations running. But that production had relied on a foundation no one had truly appreciated. Human workers who maintained the facilities, operated the equipment, performed the 1,000 small tasks that kept everything functioning. When the humans left, the Vrelians hired other species. But those species demanded proper wages, proper working conditions, and proper respect. Things the Vrelians had never given humans. Their profit margins evaporated. Factories shut down. Supply chains broke. Within 5 years of humanity's departure, the Vrelian economy was struggling. Within 10 years, it was in crisis. Within 15 years, colonies were being abandoned as the Vrelians could no longer afford to maintain their infrastructure. And they were not the only ones suffering. In the council medical facilities on Station Krell 9, doctors struggled with an outbreak of Jarian flu. It was not a particularly deadly disease, but it was highly contagious and caused severe discomfort. Treatment was straightforward, using a medication developed 40 years ago by a joint human-Jarian research team, except the medication was no longer being produced. The manufacturing process had been run by human technicians who understood the complex chemistry involved. When they left, they took their knowledge with them. Other species tried to replicate the process, but something was always wrong. The medication either did not work or produced dangerous side effects, Dr. Keswick, a Jarian physician who had worked with humans, stared at his dying patients and felt a shame he had never experienced before. He had been one of the many who dismissed humans as primitive. Now he was watching people die because those primitives had been the ones who actually understood the medical processes. Everyone else had taken for granted. Similar problems cascaded across council space. Agricultural techniques that humans had developed to feed council worlds failed when others tried to implement them. The humans had understood soil chemistry, crop rotation, pest management in ways that seemed simple but were actually sophisticated. Without them, crop yields fell. Some worlds faced famine. Communication networks began to degrade. The massive arrays that connected council space had been built by ancient civilizations millions of years ago. They worked, but they required constant maintenance. Humans had been the technicians crawling through access tunnels, replacing components, making adjustments. Other species had considered such work beneath them. Now the networks flickered and failed. Messages took longer to transmit. Some regions lost contact entirely. The Council's ability to coordinate across its vast territory weakened. In the council chamber, a session was called to address what was being called the infrastructure crisis. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered, many of them angry, all of them confused. How did this happen? Demanded a delegate from a species that resembled a floating jellyfish. How did the departure of one primitive species cause such widespread problems? A Vrelian representative, no longer as arrogant as his predecessor had been, spoke carefully. We have analyzed the economic data. Humans were involved in approximately 70% of all maintenance operations, 30% of all manufacturing processes, and 40% of all technical support services across council space. We did not realize the extent of their involvement because we considered such work menial. They were doing the jobs no one else wanted, added a delegate from the Kashari species. Jobs we considered beneath us. Maintenance, repair, technical support, basic research, agricultural management. We let them do these things because we thought such work was for lesser beings. But they were lesser beings, protested the jellyfish delegate. They had primitive technology. They understood nothing compared to us. Did they? The question came from Taran, a researcher who had worked with human scientists 20 years ago. He stood now, old and regretful. I supervised human researchers in my laboratory. I thought I was teaching them. But looking back, I realized they were the ones asking the questions that led to breakthroughs. They wondered about things we had stopped wondering about millions of years ago. They approached old problems with fresh perspectives. I dismissed their contributions as luck or accident. I was wrong. A database specialist rose to speak. We have been investigating another mystery. Over the past 10 years, revolutionary technology has been appearing on the black market. Miniaturized fold drives that surpass anything council science has produced. Medical devices that cure diseases we considered untreatable. Energy systems that violate our understanding of physics. We assumed these were coming from some hidden advanced civilization. We now believe they were human inventions, being sold by the few human traders who had them before the Exodus. Silence fell across the chamber. The implications were staggering. You are saying, the jellyfish delegate said slowly, that humans achieved technological superiority while we mocked them? We are saying that they were advancing while we were stagnant, Taran replied. They had only been in space for 2 centuries. But in those 2 centuries, they learned, adapted, and innovated at a rate we cannot match. Our species have had faster-than-light travel for millions of years. What have we invented lately? What new discoveries have we made? We became comfortable. We stopped pushing boundaries. Humans never had that luxury. They had to keep striving because we gave them no choice. In the Council archives, investigators made a disturbing discovery. They pulled up records from exploration missions, looking for any trace of humanity's new location. What they found instead was evidence that humans had been mapping unexplored regions for years before they left, using techniques that should have been impossible with their primitive technology. They used our own sensors against us, explained a technical analyst. They piggybacked their scans on our network traffic, built maps from our data, while exploring regions we ignored. They found routes through space we never knew existed. And now they are gone, and we have no idea where. Expedition fleets were sent to search. Ships explored the vectors humans might have taken. They found nothing. A few dead colonies that had been briefly occupied and then abandoned. No trace of the main fleet. No signals. No trails. It was as if 43 billion people had simply vanished into the void. The Council sent probes to Earth's solar system. They found it exactly as humanity had left it. Earth itself was pristine, cities preserved but empty, satellites deactivated, no sign of damage or disaster. A ghost system waiting. They left by choice, the probe commander reported. Everything is maintained, protected. They could return at any time. But there is no one here. On Station Krell 9, where Dr. Keswick struggled with the flu outbreak, a solution finally arrived from an unexpected source. A human freighter appeared, its captain a woman named Jian, who had been trading in Council space before the Exodus. She had chosen to remain behind, operating independently. "I have the medication you need," Jian said. "Manufactured using the correct process. I will give it to you for free, because people are dying. But I want something in return." "Anything," Dr. Keswick said desperately. "I want you to understand," Jian said. "Humanity did not leave because we were weak or primitive or unable to compete. We left because we were tired of being treated as less than equal. We left because dignity mattered more than acceptance. And we took our knowledge with us because you never valued it when you had free access to it." She handed over the medication. "This is the last help you will receive from us unless things change. Humanity is gone. We built our own civilization far from here. We do not need you anymore. The question is, can you survive without us?" The medication saved thousands of lives. But Jian's words spread through the medical community, then through the broader council. People began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity, about what they had lost when the humans left. Research teams analyzed the economic data more carefully. What they found was sobering. Before humanity arrived, the council had been growing slowly, comfortable in their dominance. During humanity's 2 centuries among them, growth had accelerated in every sector. Technology advanced faster. Medical breakthroughs increased. Even art and culture flourished as humans contributed their unique perspectives. And after humanity left, everything had slowed again, stagnated. The council was still massive, still powerful, but it was becoming static. Without humans asking uncomfortable questions, challenging assumptions, and approaching problems from fresh angles. Innovation had died. We thought we were superior because we had existed longer, Taran said in a research paper that circulated widely. But longevity without growth is not superiority. It is stagnation. Humanity, in their brief time among us, taught us that. We were too arrogant to learn the lesson. Now they are gone, and we are left diminished. The council called an emergency session. For the first time in recorded history, the topic was not a war, not a territorial dispute, not a trade agreement. The topic was a single question. What do we do about humanity? We should apologize, said one delegate. Send envoys to find them. Offer them full membership, technology sharing. Everything we denied them before. We should learn from our mistake, said another. Whether they return or not, we should never treat another species this way again. We should be honest, Taran said. We do not know if they will ever want to speak with us again. We treated them with contempt for 200 years. We mocked their achievements and exploited their labor. Why would they return? Why would they help us? The vote was called. The council agreed, unanimously for the first time in centuries, to issue a formal apology to humanity, to offer full membership, full technology sharing, full respect, to acknowledge that they had been wrong. The message was crafted carefully. It was sent on every frequency, broadcast to every region of space. It was heartfelt, honest, and desperate. To the human species, wherever you may be, the Galactic Council acknowledges grave errors in judgment and treatment. We failed to recognize your worth, your contributions, your potential. We offer our sincere apologies and invite you to return as full and equal members. Please respond. Please help us understand how to do better. The message went out into the void. Days passed. Weeks, months, no response came. Humanity remained silent as they had been for 20 years. And in council space, the crisis continued. The unraveling of a civilization that had forgotten how much it relied on those it had considered beneath notice. 50 years after humanity's exodus, a single ship appeared at the edge of council space. It was not a colony vessel or a warship. It was a diplomatic courier, sleek and efficient, using full drive technology that made council sensors struggle to track it properly. The ship requested docking permission at the central council station and transmitted a single message. Ambassador Gino requests an audience. With the full council, the message sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Humanity was returning. After 50 years of silence, they were finally responding. The council chamber was more crowded than it had been in decades. Every species sent representatives. No one wanted to miss this moment. The chamber buzzed with speculation, hope, and for some, fear. What had humanity become in 50 years? What did they want? Jinho entered the chamber and silence fell. He was old now, ancient by human standards, 122 years old. But he walked without assistance, his back straight, his expression calm. Medical advances had extended his life and health far beyond what should have been possible. Behind him walked Haijin, now 78, but equally healthy. She carried no data displays this time. No proposals. No begging materials. She simply walked with quiet confidence. They approached the speaker's platform, where Jinho had stood 50 years ago. The platform where he had been mocked and dismissed. Where humanity had been called barely sentient primitives clinging to a backwater rock. The council chairman, a new being in the role, spoke first. Ambassador Jinho, the council welcomes your return. We received your message, and we wish to express, once again, our sincere apologies for how humanity was treated. We were wrong. We failed to see your value. We hope you will consider rejoining the galactic community. Jinho nodded slowly. Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate those words. But before we discuss rejoining, I think it would be helpful for the council to understand why we left. Not the reasons we gave, but the real truth. He activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the platform. Images of human colonies scattered across council space, workers in mines and factories and farms. Images of human researchers in laboratories, asking questions and being dismissed. Images of the council chamber itself, delegates laughing at human presentations. "We left because you never saw us as equals," Jinho said. "You saw us as servants, as entertainment, as a convenient source of labor for the jobs you considered beneath you. You took our contributions and gave us nothing but contempt in return." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates looked ashamed, others defensive. Jinho continued, "But we did not leave to hide. We did not leave because we were too weak to compete. We left because we chose dignity over acceptance. We chose to build our own future rather than beg for a place at your table." Haijin stepped forward. New holographic images replaced the old ones. These showed something different. Cities on alien worlds under strange suns, orbital habitats surrounding gas giants, research stations in nebulae, massive structures that dwarfed anything the Council had built. "This is what we have created in 50 years, Haijin said. "We found 347 worlds suitable for colonization or terraforming. We built cities, established industries, created a civilization that spans 27 star systems. Our population has grown to 60 billion, and we did it all without Council assistance." The images continued. Ships that moved faster than anything in Council space. Medical facilities where diseases the Council considered incurable were treated routinely. Research centers pushing the boundaries of physics in ways the Council had never attempted. "We advanced," Haijin continued. "We innovated. We asked the questions you stopped asking millions of years ago. And we found answers." Dr. Mino, now 92 but still sharp, stepped forward to join them. He activated new displays showing technical specifications, research papers, breakthrough discoveries. "We solved fusion containment using quantum principles your scientists dismissed as impossible. We developed faster-than-light communication that does not require relay stations. We created medical nanotechnology that extends healthy lifespan by centuries. We achieved artificial gravity without exotic matter." Should I continue? The Council chamber was utterly silent now. Every eye, every sensor, every attention was focused on the three humans standing at the speaker's platform. "You see," Jinho said quietly, "we never needed your technology. We needed your respect. And when you refused to give it, we left to earn our own. The question now is not whether you will accept us into the Council. The question is whether we will accept your invitation." The Council chairman seemed to struggle for words. Finally, he managed. "What? What would you require? To return to the galactic community?" Haijin pulled up a simple document. "These are our terms. First, humanity will be granted full membership status with all rights and privileges. No observer status. No probationary period. Equal partnership." "Agreed," the chairman said immediately. "Second, technology sharing will be mutual and equal. We will share what we have developed, and you will share what you have. No restrictions, no holding back knowledge because you consider the other species unworthy." "Agreed." "Third, any species that wishes to join human space as equals will be welcomed. We learn from your mistake. We will not create a hierarchy of species. We will not allow some to be considered lesser than others." "Agreed." "Fourth," and Haijin's voice became harder, "any species or individual that demonstrates the kind of bigotry and contempt humanity faced will be banned from human space permanently. We will not tolerate mockery. We will not tolerate being treated as inferior. We demand respect, or we demand distance." The chairman hesitated, then nodded. "These terms are acceptable. More than acceptable. They are just." Jinho looked around the chamber. He saw shame on many faces, understanding on others, and on some he still saw skepticism, the belief that humans were somehow exaggerating or lying about their achievements. To those skeptics, he said, "I know some of you doubt what I have shown you today. That is fine. You are welcome to visit human space and see for yourselves. But understand this. We do not need you. We wanted community, not masters. We wanted friendship, not hierarchy. If you can understand the difference, we can begin again. If you cannot, we will return to our own space and wish you well." A delegate from a small species, one of the 3 who had voted in favor of humanity 50 years ago, stood. "Ambassador Gino, I voted for your petition all those years ago. I was overruled. I want you to know that not all of us agreed with how you were treated. Some of us tried to speak for you. I remember," Gino said, his expression softening. "And I thanked you for that. This invitation to rejoin is not just for your benefit. It is for ours as well. We have built a good civilization, but it is isolated. We have 27 star systems. The Council has thousands. There is much we can learn from each other if we approach it as equals." The session continued for hours. Questions were asked and answered. Details were negotiated. But the fundamental agreement was clear. Humanity would return to the galactic community, but on their own terms as equals. In the weeks that followed, Council delegations visited human space. What they found exceeded even the claims made in the Council chamber. The cities were beautiful, blending human aesthetics with alien environments. The technology was revolutionary. The people were confident, healthy, and proud. Yuna, now 85 and serving as Minister of Logistics for the human government, gave tours of the major population centers. "We built this ourselves," she said to every delegation. "When you told us we were not good enough, we did not argue. We simply left and became better." Dae-Yun, retired from active service, but still influential, met with Council military commanders. "We have no warships," he told them. "We did not build weapons. We built defenses, yes, but our focus was on creation, not destruction. We learned that lesson from watching the Council. You spent millennia competing with each other. We spent 50 years cooperating with ourselves." Soman, now director of the largest research institute in human space, presented papers at galactic scientific conferences. Her miniaturized fold drives became standard across Council space, licensed freely to any species that wanted them. Other human innovations followed. Medical breakthroughs, energy systems, communication technology. And slowly, carefully, the relationship between humanity and the Council was rebuilt. Not as it had been, with humans on the outside begging for acceptance, but as it should have been from the beginning, as partners, equals, colleagues, pursuing common goals. The Vrelians, whose economy had collapsed, received human aid, technical support, manufacturing assistance, agricultural advice. Not because humans were obligated to help, but because they chose to. "We remember what it is like to struggle," Hygiene told the Vrelian ambassador. "We will not let you suffer if we can prevent it." Dr. Keswick, the Jarian physician who had watched patients die from lack of human medication, traveled to human space to study their medical advances. He spent 5 years learning, then returned to Council space with knowledge that saved millions of lives. "I was wrong about humans," he said in every interview. "I thought their medicine was primitive. But they understood healing in ways we had forgotten. They cared about every patient, not just the statistics." Taurine, the researcher who had supervised human scientists decades ago, was invited to join a human research team. At 140 years old, he was considered young by his species standards. He spent his reign